Hey there friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today we got a bunch of Helldivers 2 news to talk about, starting with a brand new stratagem to unlock right away. We also got a new major order that could have pretty big ramifications for the Galactic War overall, and then finally a balancing patch that changes a ton of weapons in the game. There are a lot of folks that are unhappy about this, but I'm going to talk about why I don't think you should be overreacting to the nerfs quite yet, because there's a lot of good things that will take the place of those things that have been changed. So jumping right into it, we did get confirmation that the Airburst rocket launcher did win in the latest major order, so you can unlock that right away. I think the weapon is a little bit underrated. It is really good for killing small targets in a large group, but it is pretty situational overall. It is really good at killing yourself and killing teammates, even though that's been adjusted as well in today's patch. And then finally, it also is not very good at killing armored enemies. So I just don't think it's worth a slot in your loadout overall, especially in comparison with other better options. So for me personally, I'm not a fan of the Airburst rocket launcher. I wish it had been the anti-tank mines, even though I know not everybody loves mines in general. I just think this would have been a good option to have and really provide something different that we don't currently have in the game. But oh well. That's democracy for you. Anyway, we're going to move on to the major order as the terminated control system is failing, and now we have to deactivate it on Errata Prime, Fenrir, and then Turing. It does seem like the Terminids as well as the automatons are creeping ever closer to Super Earth, which is very much a problem, and I do think we are really on our last ditch effort to repel them before we have something major happen in the galaxy. I'm not sure what that is yet, but it does feel like we are getting pushed from each side, and we're going to have to turn things around some way, shape, or form. Now, as far as why this is happening with the terminated control system, it has been revealed that Termicide is no longer working on the Terminids, which sounds insane because the scientists say that that was impossible, but who am I to question Super Earth? It's not working anymore, and now we got to figure it out going forward. Hopefully, once we deactivate the TCS, we will no longer have to worry about them, and we can push back the Terminids once and for all. Now, moving on, I'm going to talk about the balancing patch today, because there are some nerfs that don't make a lot of sense to me, others that I think were necessary, some good buffs, and overall, I think the meta will be in a pretty solid place after this patch. So, jumping right into it, the exploding crossbow got a nerf, which is confusing to me because I already felt like that wasn't one of the best weapons in the game overall. On the other end of the spectrum, the Quasar cannon got a nerf, and that is absolutely necessary because that thing was just way too good. I know people will be upset about it, but for me personally, it was so much better than every other option. It just didn't make sense to run anything else unless you just wanted to mess around. This thing was so good, and it definitely needed a nerf. Then we got an adjudicator buff. I don't know if that's going to be enough to use it, but the laser cannon got a buff as well. And that's one that I absolutely will be using a lot going forward, and I think was a bit underrated before the patch. I've seen and I've used this a ton, and I think it is very, very good. So while it got slightly reduced damage versus large volume bodies, it got slightly increased damage overall, and I think that'll be a net positive. Now, we also got a change to the Punisher plasma with smaller mag size, but also increased amount of magazines received from resupply, increased projectile speed, some changes. I don't know if that's going to really change it. It's also now placed in the energy weapon category. Again, I don't know if that's going to be enough to make that worth it. We got the Arc Blitzer, which got a buff. Again, I don't know if that's going to be really valuable overall. The Eruptor got a nerf, which I'm kind of surprised by. I thought that was in a good spot, but it does seem like that one was really overperforming. I did like the Eruptor, so I'm not exactly surprised, but decreasing mags from 12 to 6 is kind of crazy. The last Sickle got a nerf as well. Again, not surprised. That one was phenomenal, but the last Scythe got a buff, and also a couple other laser weapons I'll talk about in a little bit. Now, again, the Scythe sounds like it could be good. I don't know if it's going to be really worth it, but it also got increased damage and then decreased mag number from 6 to 4. So overall, that might not be enough to put it into the meta category. The Railgun got a change. Increased armor penetration in both modes and stagger force slightly reduced. So that's a change that should separate it from other options. And again, I think with the nerf to the Quasar, the railgun is really back on the menu. Heavy machine gun, third-person crosshair enabled. That sounds fine. Diligence counter sniper, damage increase and ergonomics improved, so that hopefully will be good. I would love for some of the snipers to really be actually meta and usable. Some of them feel okay, but it's just hard to use them in certain situations. We got the Diligence also got a buff. The Redeemer got a nerf with an increase in recoil. The Peacemaker got an increased damage buff. Senator got an increased damage buff, and Speed Loader added when reloading on an empty cylinder. Speeds up reload and empty considerably. So Senator might be the play going forward, to be honest. Then we got the Last Dagger increased damage from 150 to 200. That's another one. It might be an all laser meta with some of these options. I think that is a potentially good thing. The Liberator and Liberator Concussive both got damage increases. The Jar Dominator damage decreased by only 25, so that should still be pretty good overall. Guard Dog damage decreased by 30%, which is weird. I didn't think that was meta or anything like that. And then the Airburst Rocket Launcher, reduced proximity status, and Airburst Rocket will no longer detonate when shot near Stratagems and other Helldivers, which I think is a good thing, because the chaos you could cause with that was pretty interesting. Increased health to the Machine Gun Sentry and Tesla Tower, and then the Spear added reload stage, reload after the spent missile has been discarded. Enemies, Bile Spewer and Nursing Spewer's movement speed reduced. Hulk's force required for them to stagger slightly increased. Hulk Scorcher direct flamethrower damage reduced by 20%. Thank you for that. That is absolutely massive. Devastator fire slightly increased. Gunship sideways movement slightly increased. Scout Strider riders now less vulnerable to explosion. Fog generators health and armor increased. Gunship spawners now have a much lower cap on how many gunships they can have active at the same time. Interesting overall. Now here's one that has a lot of people upset. Patrol spawning has been increased when there are fewer than 4 players. The fewer the players, the bigger the change. For 4-player missions, there will no change. The biggest noticeable change will be solo players at higher difficulty. Now, what they confirmed is that previously you got 1/6 of the patrols if you were solo, where now it's 1/4. So it's pretty much balanced now. So instead you got 1/4. Instead, before you had 1/6 of the amount of patrols. Now it's 1/4 for solo, 1/2 for duo, and then 3/4 for trio. So that, I think, should balance things out and make things pretty even. So you have the same number of enemies per player on the field. And I know solo players will complain about that, but I think the game felt easier at times to run around and do your objectives as a solo player. And I think that's a absolutely necessary change in order to push forward and make sure that you don't make the game too easy or too hard in one way or the other. Spread Democracy mission, now otherwise known as Raise the Flag, can now be enjoyed at higher difficulties, which is good. I think they reduced the fire damage overall, and there's a ton of bug fixes as well. So overall, I'm pretty excited about what's coming in Helldivers 2, what we've got recently, and what the future holds for this game. Some will claim the game is dead or dying, and that is completely false. Right now, we have over 100,000 just in the Umlaut sector of the Galactic War on the current major order. So it just shows that there are still a ton of people playing, and I think that is an absolutely great thing. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Helldivers 2 content from me going forward. I do think these changes and why people are upset to the nerfs makes sense, but also we got so many buffs, we got so many good stuff in the game right now to use that it's absolutely just fine to swap things around, test things out, and see what works for you. I definitely think you'll find the new meta sooner rather than later. Anyway, my name is JoPa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.